Hi, my name is Sydney, and I welcome you to this presentation, which represents a summary of the interpretive insights that I got from the study that I did on Ruth chapter 2, beginning with verse 1 to chapter 3, verse 18, using the feminist approach. It has been quite a mouthful for the whole semester, but I enjoyed the ride anyway. It was very enriching, to say the least, to be able to take a different perspective and look at a passage that I have looked at before, learning new insights. I started by defining the feminist approach. It was a very interesting approach because by feminism, we simply refer to the concept of or an approach of studying the Bible that focuses on gender inclusivity. And in this case, we are looking at the passages of the Bible from a woman's perspective. It really points to respecting the diverse experiences and opinions, the identities, the strengths of women. And through the interpretation, one also seeks to find ways of empowering women who are struggling in most cultures with patriarchy. Patriarchy is a major problem. So the interpretive approach took a form that tried to emphasize a lot on the experiences of women, as opposed to just looking at the passage from a patriarchal perspective. Feminism on itself covers a wide range of issues, from gender equality, reproductive rights, violence against women, intersectionality, and representation of women in all spheres of life, including in the church. As a movement, feminism has gone through noticeable transitions as it has passed through phases. It was very interesting for me to discover the history of feminism, which started long back as a movement which arose as a response to the feeling that women were being oppressed. And the movement started in the US, and feminism happened in waves, and 3 waves are known to have characterized this movement. And because of my time, I'm not going to get into each of the movements, but all I can say is that each movement built on the previous movement, and the focus was to find equality, to search for the equality of women in relationship to men. The third wave, which is the last, which started in the 1990s up to the 200s, is of interest to me. It was noted that women's experiences around the world were different, and this depended on race, ethnicity, as well as sexual orientation. And such figures as Judith Butler came out as notable figures. And according to an online source, the Wikipedia, feminist theology has various goals which include an increase in the role of women in religious circles. This is very interesting, because when we talk of religious circles, and particularly Christianity, you are really saying uh, Christians, believers are challenged to revisit the scriptures and do a reinterpretation or do a focused study which sort of abandons the traditional approach that has been used, where in the majority of cases the Bible or theologians have used writings that were produced by men, and in the majority of cases it was men doing the interpretation. But in this case, you are saying if you are a man or you are a woman, you prioritize women. How would they read a passage? And reading from my story that I was focusing on, the story of Ruth, it was very interesting for me to learn quite a number of issues regarding Ruth. From a feminist perspective, the book of Ruth contains quite some empowering insights, empowering for women or the marginalized groups, which are represented in this case by the women in the book, who are mainly Ruth and Naomi. Reading through the book using feminist lenses help to highlight certain areas that are usually overlooked when people use the traditional approach. The narrative of Ruth demonstrates that the Bible is actually a feminist resource that can be used to deal with feminism and fight for the rights of women. It is interesting to note that way before women like Elizabeth Cady Stanton started to advocate for the rights of women, God himself, through his word in the Bible, had already started to fight for the rights of women. Even in a society where patriarchy was the norm, it is quite comforting to note that God stood for the rights of the marginalized, voiceless in the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth demonstrates how a poor, widowed woman who was a foreigner was empowered in a society where everything appeared to be at odds or to be against her. One message that comes out clearly from the narrative is of how God stood and fought for the rights of these marginalized and oppressed groups. Of interest is that when the book comes to an end, you see an empowered Ruth, you see an empowered Naomi, and quite different from what you see when the book starts to narrate the incident. So in all, I can say the book is quite empowering on women of from all cultures, those that are marginalized, because even the concept of redemption is dealt with in a very, very interesting way. Not only is Ruth redeemed from a situation, but economically she also gets her land, and Naomi gets the land back to the family of Elimelech, which was a source of empowerment for these widows who were left on their own, and having a child was back then a form of empowerment, which remains a form of empowerment today in a lot of cultures. So in all, you can say, one can actually say Ruth who is a foreigner, is taken or moved from Moab, and she finds herself in a foreign land. But in a foreign land, she again finds herself going up the ladder, up to a level where I would say she became top in society, because her name is counted in the lineage of such greats as Jesse, David, and by the time you get to the New Testament, Ruth, a woman who had no name, a woman who was a foreigner, a woman who owned nothing is actually the best that God could offer, because it is through her that Jesus was born. Talk of Jesus and his empowering message to all nations and to all people, women included. One can argue and one can certainly vouch and say Ruth was liberated, and through her liberation she has liberated a lot of women in various societies today. I thank you.